John Maurice Francis Egan, United States Marine Corps. Sergeant John Maurice Francis Egan was born in Hammond, Indiana. He enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve at the U.S. Naval Reserve Armory in Chicago, Illinois, on November 14, 1938. He was assigned to Company D, 9th Battalion, United States Marine Corps Reserve. His military records indicate that he was born on October 2, 1921. Sergeant Egan, in an honorable attempt to finally set the record straight, freely admitted that he was really born in 1923. He was discharged from the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve in order to enlist in the regular Marine Corps on January 11, 1940. And he reported to the Recruit Depot Base Troops Marine Base, San Diego, California, on January 16, 1940. On June 21, 1940, he was ordered to report directly to the Marine Detachment USS San Francisco, CA-38, when the battle cruiser arrived at Puget Sound Naval Station for an overhaul. As a member of the Marine Detachment, he was aboard when the USS San Francisco returned to her home port at Pearl Harbor, Territory of Hawaii, on September 29, 1940. He was promoted to Private First Class on August 4, 1941. On the morning of December 7, 1941, the USS San Francisco was awaiting docking and cleaning of her heavily fouled keel and bottom hull. Her engineering plant was largely broken down for overhaul. Ammunition for her 5 and 8-inch guns had been placed into storage. Her 3-inch guns had been completely removed to permit installation of 4 1.1-inch quadruple mounts. Those mounts had not yet even been installed. Her 50 caliber machine guns were being overhauled, so only small arms and 2 30 caliber machine guns were available. Moreover, a number of San Francisco's officers and men were absent. In other words, the ship was almost defenseless. At 07:55 hours, Japanese planes began bombing dives onto Ford Island, and by 0800, the surprise attack was well underway. The men in San Francisco had secured the ship for watertightness and had begun looking for opportunities to fight back. Some crossed to USS New Orleans to help her with their anti-aircraft batteries. Others began using the available rifles and machine guns. 50 caliber machine gun ammunition was transferred to USS Tracy for use aboard that ship. On the morning of December 7, 1941, Private Egan was on duty, raising the colors on USS San Francisco when the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor began. John Maurice Egan, United States Marine Corps. I recognize this next gentleman from his fancy moves. Senior Chief Petty Officer Michael Mickey Gannett. Mickey Gannett was born November 18, 1919 in Mogador, Ohio. He moved to California in 1939 and joined the Navy on January 21st, 1941. He attended boot camp and a quartermaster signalman school in San Diego, California. In August of 1941, he joined USS Pennsylvania, BB-38 at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. On Sunday, December 7, 1941, USS Pennsylvania was in dry dock, across the channel from Ford Island and Battleship Row. Mickey and his fellow football teammates were preparing for the Fleet Championship game against USS Arizona, BB-39. Since we were in dry dock, he writes, we had donned our football uniforms before leaving the ship at 0800 for a practice scrimmage. At about 07:55, the first alarm of general quarters was sounded throughout the ship. Hearing that alarm, you report to battle station immediately in whatever you're wearing. As my battle station was in the crow's nest of the mainmast, I reported there in my football uniform, minus my cleats and my football helmet. The shoulder pads made it difficult to get through the trap door. USS Pennsylvania was reported to be the first ship to fire on the attacking enemy aircraft. During the attack, the ship suffered 15 men killed in action, 14 missing in action, and 38 wounded. That football game was never played. Later, when he went home to Ohio on leave in 1942, Mickey learned that one of his neighbors, who had gone to a different high school, was aboard the USS Arizona. He and his neighbor would have played the same game that December morning that they would have played as they did in high school against each other. Mickey's neighbor is still serving aboard USS Arizona. On August 12, 1945, at Okinawa, USS Pennsylvania was hit by a Japanese torpedo. The torpedo struck the rear of the ship near the propellers. The ship was a living compartment. That area of the ship was the living compartment of the entire Pennsylvania crew of quartermasters. From my crew of 26 men, I lost 23 of my quartermasters that day. And the next day, the Japanese sued for peace. After the war, Mickey remained in the Navy, retired from the Navy October 10, 1963, as a senior chief quartermaster. That's Senior Chief Michael Vicky Ganich, United States. Not present, but who did provide a bio is Mr. Chuck Kilber, United States Navy. Chuck Kohler was born on a farm in west central Minnesota. He enlisted in the U.S. Navy on age 17 years of age on April 2nd, 1941, and completed his boot training at Great Lakes Naval Training Center, Lake Michigan, Illinois. He was sent on to Detroit, Michigan for training in aviation metalsmith school. Upon completion of his training, he was sent to San Diego, California, where he boarded the aircraft carrier USS Lexington for assignment at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. In October 1941, he reported to Aerial Patrol Squadron VP-23, located on Fort Island in the center of Pearl Harbor. On the morning of December 7, 1941, I was assigned to the security watch 0800 to 1200 hour shift in the hangar building, number 54. I was up in the office trying to type a letter to my dear sweet mother, Kohler began. I was unpacking on the typewriter when I heard an approaching aircraft. That sound wasn't unusual. This wasn't naval base, but it was Sunday, and that struck me as odd. Then the sound changed. I knew it was a power dive. Even so, I told myself it was probably a pilot doing some hot diving. I was thinking, I don't want to be in his shoes when the captain finds out about that. But little did I know we were in a lot more trouble than that. The tremendous explosion shot glass and debris into the room. Stunned, I thought it'd be best to get outside to help. Ripping the letter from the typewriter to avoid possible later punishment, I just crumpled the note, tossed it aside, and rushed outside into a world I'd never encountered before. I saw a plane coming in with blinking, flashing lights. Being a farm boy, I didn't recognize that, but found out later they were actually the machine guns firing. A bomb strapped to the bottom of the plane was a considerable distraction to me. When I saw that big red sun rising on the starboard wing, I realized that these weren't the friendly boys I thought they were. After being chewed out by a duty officer for refusing to take cover in a construction ditch, I wanted my family to know that I died fighting, not hiding. Another sailor and I took action. There were bombs and bullets raining down, and all our ammo was locked up. We finally got to a mounted .50 caliber machine gun. Biggest gun I'd ever handled on the farm was a .22. This thing was like a cannon without wheels. We managed to hoist it up into a PPY cavalry airplane and fired at the attacking aircraft. Now, I'm hearing popping sounds, bullets slamming through the fuselage. My country boy instinct kicked in, where I grew up being a good shot was a difference between dinner and going hungry. And I raced off a trail of fire along one plane. Eventually, Kohler said, planes like swarms of bees descended before the smoke grew thick and blacked them all out. I went back in 2010 for the very first time in 64 years. I went on the USS Arizona Memorial. Last time I saw the ship, I seen it blowing up. The bodies floating in the water. The waste of war, I remembered. But this time it was different. I often speak to audiences about that day, nearly 73 years ago. I do this in honor of those who died that fateful day. That day changed us forever. E.J. Chuck Kohler, United States Navy. Carl Marble, United States Navy. Carl Marble was born on December 11, 1918, on a farm in Copper, Iowa. On his 18th birthday, Carl took the oath to enlist in the Navy in 1936. 2 days later, Carl arrived by train at the U.S. Naval Training Station in San Diego. December 7, 1941, Carl had been detached duty from the USS Enterprise, CV-6, to set up the Naval Air Supply for the Naval Air Corps on Fort Island. The Army had just given the Navy use of Luke Field for Navy aircraft carrier planes. Carl was an aviation supply and was one of 4 USS Enterprise sailors who did not go with the carrier during his 3-day trip to Wake Island. At 7:55 a.m., Carl was waiting for the ferry at the Mary Point Ferry Landing to go on to Fort Island and meet the USS Enterprise at its expected arrival time of 8 a.m. When the attack began, the Japanese planes flew very low over his head and were dropping torpedoes aimed at the battleships anchored at Fort Island. He was in the open. There was no obvious cover other than a tiny tree. Eventually, he got across to Fort Island, found a truck loaded other passengers, and drove to the Fleet Aviation Central Store, which was on the Pearl City side of Fort Island. Sailors from the bond ships began arriving at the store in search of clothing. Carl and his staff opened the store for these men, but since most of the supply was aviation parts, they opened their personal clothing lockers for them to take whatever they needed. That night, Carl was ordered to man a .50 caliber machine gun on top of the roof of the supply building in anticipation of another Japanese attack. There's no line of communication on that base. They were told to shoot at any planes coming in. Around 7 p.m., planes did come in and 6 were shot down. Tragically, these planes were Grumman F-4F Wildcats from Fire Squadron 6 from USS Enterprise.